Now, you know, we've been covering the story of French President Macron's visit to South Africa all day today. And, of course, it's the biggest story in the country, if not the continent. For more analysis on the story, we're joined by political economist Mandla Lionel Isaacs. Mandla, thank you for joining me this afternoon. I'm glad that you're a political economist. It's all about the money, isn't it?
It absolutely is. France is the 7th biggest economy in the world. So as much as it sometimes flies beneath our radar here in Anglophone Africa, it remains an important global player economically and diplomatically, even though it is not a top trading partner of ours. And therefore, it is an important visit that we should seek to use to leverage some of our goals on the international scene.
So tell me what the balance of power is from an economic point of view, a trade point of view between us and France. Is it mainly us importing? What do we export to the French or to the Europeans, but particularly the French?
Well, we export to them vehicles is the biggest category, trucks, some cars, some aircraft parts, as well as a small degree of machinery, things of that nature, but they're not the biggest trading partner of ours in the European Union. Europe in general is a good market for our manufactured goods, which is obviously something that we're trying to focus on more as an economy. I think with France, one of the challenges is the broadly European, from a European lens as well as a French lens, the subsidies that they provide to their farmers is perhaps something that we should be discussing as one of the impediments to us exporting more of our goods to France.
But the timing of this particular visit, I mean, we've said it's very much within the global COVID-19 response. So how is France trying to position itself around this particular issue in this particular moment?
Well, France is they're a leading sort of global power in terms of the use of soft power. They're very skilled at using, influence. They've been quite sort of come under a lot of fire on the African continent in terms of its relations with its former colonies. But this is an example in terms of the vaccine, the COVID-19 pandemic and the vaccine discourse. Perhaps this is an example of France trying to use soft power to really expand its influence. I think what we can try to engage France on to leverage this moment is support for African initiatives to create more homegrown manufacturing capacity to the extent that we need global finance to support that, the global public health infrastructure in terms of all the mechanisms around drugs, regulation, patent protection, and all of those things that France can be an influential player in assisting with, as well as the just broader, you need lots of patient funding to grow the kind of manufacturing capacity that we're going to need, not just in South Africa, but in other countries like Morocco, Senegal. So to the extent that France can support both bilaterally as well as in multilateral institutions some of those initiatives, that could be quite helpful.
I'm not sure whether you have any special insights, but of course, as a country, our biggest need is job creation, and that only comes from foreign direct investment. What kind of significant investment have we seen from the French in South Africa, and can we anticipate anything further?
Well, France is probably a little bit far behind some of the other countries. For example, one of the big sources of FDI in South Africa coming out of Europe is in our automotive sector. So we don't produce as many vehicles from some of the French OEMs as we do for the Germans, for example. But as you said, as a developing country, we're trying to grow. We should be trying to aggressively grow our exports in order to ignite growth and job creation. That means trying to create two things. Number one is markets. So we should be trying to expand as much as possible our trade to a country like France. We export about $1 billion a year worth of goods and services to them. We should be trying to expand that. I mean, that's roughly 14 or 15 billion rands. They're the 4th biggest tourism market coming out from the international partners, excluding Africa. So we should be trying to expand that. But certainly we should be trying to engage French companies to say, come and manufacture here. The West, to a lesser extent in Europe than the United States, but the West is trying to pivot away from its manufacturing dependence on China. So we should be trying to speak to the French to say, have some of your companies set up facilities here to export into the EU to sort of diversify their global supply chains. That's another opportunity.
And of course, the big news in terms of French companies in our part of the world is that Total Brolpada discovery of the gas condensate just off our coast. I'm sure that's probably going to come up, the Utaniqua Basin discovery of gas. I mean, I think that's a massive project, and it's got many, many decades to run.
Well, it's a huge project. Obviously, estimates in the hundreds of billions of dollars in terms of the ultimate economic potential over time. Of course, that will be many years away before that find can enter production. So you can imagine that is definitely going to be high on the agenda. The French president, as well as our president, they will be looking to establish a close, long-term relationship. For a country like France, that kind of investment, you want that kind of political stability, you want security guarantees, as we've seen obviously with what's going on in Mozambique, but that's obviously a lesser issue in South Africa. But it comes down more to the policy and regulatory environment. As that gas find takes very long to exploit, and move into production, but this is coming at a time when the climate discourse is changing. And really, the opportunity to operationalize large gas projects like that is really going to be finite over the next decade or so, because the pressure to move away from that kind of fossil fuel, even though gas is less damaging than coal, but still quite a damaging fuel, it's going to be something that is going to be quite delicate to see how much that actually comes to fruition.
Let me pivot to many, many decades ago. Our sad past during apartheid. The French were the ones who provided us with quite a bit of military hardware. The Mirage aircraft, the fighter jets were very common in our skies at the time. Is there any chance that there's some kind of military alliance as well? Is there going to be some discussion, or do you think that's a possibility once again?
Well, France is a key player in the African security picture. They are kind of the lead international force dealing with the security situation in the Sahel, in Mali, and some of those countries there. And so there probably will be some discussions around that. That role has obviously come under criticism, but at the same time, there are genuine security issues that Africa is dealing with. And what I expect that President Ramaphosa will be trying to and African partners in general will be trying to stress and trying to maneuver in the coming years is that those external parties such as France really complement, enhance, and take their lead from African security positions as opposed to being a rogue agent. Not to say that the rogue is probably too strong a word.
So just in terms of overall expectation, I mean, you know, the two presidents are going to come out and speak to us. Because we're in the context, in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic, the chances are most of that conversation is going to be dominated by this theme, the health theme, and then there's been the investment in vaccines. But surely coming down and, you know, providing investment right now for us to support Aspen and biotech with investment around vaccines, this is a bit late in the day, is it not?
Well, actually, I mean, you could say that, but I would actually say this COVID-19 situation is going to be with us for years to come. Obviously, the virus, you know, will continue to mutate. Public health experts anticipate that we're going to continuously need to update vaccines and to tweak them for the different variants. So I think this is going to be a long-term challenge that Africa has realized. We cannot be completely dependent on the rest of the world for vaccine production. And so I don't think it's too late. I do think it's opportune, and I think it's a positive sign that African countries are thinking in these terms, that we don't just want international partners to assist us with expediting vaccines from overseas, but we really do want to build an African vaccine manufacturing capacity. So I do think it's the right thrust to take.
And as a final question, I mean, one of the most devastated industries in our country through COVID-19 has been tourism, which is also a huge job creation opportunity in this country. I'm not sure that the French are very big visitors to our continent, our country. Well, not our continent, but certainly they go to Francophone Africa very often, I'm sure. But not to South Africa. The Germans are more visit more than the French, I would think. Is there a chance to open up that conversation as well?
Well, the Germans are, I think, our biggest international source of tourism, but the French are fourth. They're ahead of even China. We get about 20,000 French nationals visiting annually, at least as of 2019. So they are an important source of tourism. Of course, the Europeans generally, in winter in particular, they like to come down here when it's warm. So I think that is something that we can certainly expand. Cape Town remains a favorite. I think we can, we obviously have huge tourism offerings to offer. So I think it's going to be important that we, assure the French president about the extent to which we have the pandemic under control, that we will be a place that they can continue to come for tourism purposes, and that we should continue those kind of exchanges without the French kind of sounding the alarm on their side about which countries to avoid.
Thank you very much. Mandla Lionel Isaacs is a political economist. Thank you for that broad discussion about the visit of Emmanuel Macron to this country, his first visit. And of course, we're watching live pictures from the Union buildings. The presidents are to come out at some point in